So we'll carry out on this particular image all the basic adjustments that we feel necessary to the image. If we move along the menus now, we're going to move to a tone curve. Now in the past I've applied a little bit of tonal boost using a nice gentle S curve like that. But now that the contrast adjuster in the basic menu has been enhanced so much, you can usually just get away with dragging the contrast slider to boost your contrast. But the tonal adjustment is still there if you need it. If we move along to the next tab, which is the detailed one, within there you've got sharpening and noise reduction. And these are very powerful tools these days. Since about Photoshop CS3, things really start to improve, and CS5 and CS6 particularly have really enhanced the way the sharpening and noise reduction is applied. So sharpening, that's the default settings for sharpening, and the noise reduction is normally set to that amount. Now then, if we zoom into 100%, that's Control Alt and the 0 number key, we'll get a better idea of the sharpening effect that we're applying. By pressing the space bar and just clicking in the window, we can move the image around. We can also magnify using these little magnify buttons, or using a little preset down there. Okay, so we can just change the magnification as we see fit. Okay, for the sharpening, I'm just going to zoom into that area there for now. Now don't forget, we're only applying a small amount of sharpening. This is what's called pre-sharpening. The final amount will be done in Photoshop just before we go to save the image at its final size. So the amount, we can drag the slider, and of course that does exactly what it says, the amount of sharpening applied. Now if you press the Alt key at the same time, you get a better grayscale effect of the sharpening being applied. The sharpening is actually being applied purely to the luminosity part of the image, not to the color information. It's like when we used to sharpen in Photoshop using lab mode, purely with the luminosity channel. This is what Camera Raw does by default. It only applies it to the luminosity part of the image. So I normally have this set to around about 40 or so. It depends on the image and you know, the number of pixels in the image as well. The more pixels in the image, usually the more, you know, the greater the amount of sharpening to get the same effect. The radius, this determines the distance between adjacent pixels as to how it's going to sample this sharpening effect. And of course, sharpening, all it does, it doesn't add any detail to the image at all. It can't do that. All it does is it increases contrast between adjacent pixels, giving the illusion that you've got a sharper image. Again, we can press the Alt key and to see the effect of the radius button. Now I normally have it between about 0.8 and about 1, again depending on the image. Okay. These two are what's called suppression filters. I'll just drag that back down to 0. The detail is usually defaulted to 25. Now if it's over to the left hand side, I'll press the Alt key again, you can see the effect there. If I drag it to the right, you can see it's adding detail back into the sharpening effect. So by dragging it to the left, you're getting you're suppressing the sharpening of the previous two sliders. I normally leave that set to the default of 25. This one here is called masking, and again if you press the Alt key, click on the little slider, it goes pure white, indicating, I'll just click out to the full size of the image, indicating that the image is being fully sharpened. Everything that was white in that, when I click like that, is going to be sharpened. Now as I drag that to the right, it's sampling the image, thinking, and it's only applying sharpening to the areas that have got detail, differences in tonal brightness. So areas like the sky there, where it's very plain and that, we don't want sharpening applied to that. And by dragging it further along here, you can see that the areas without much detail there's no sharpening being applied to it. So this is a very good visual feedback as to, applying selective sharpening purely to the areas that need sharpening. Just going to zoom into this area down here for the noise reduction. Now at the moment it's set at its default, so I'm just going to drag that down to 0. But you can see in here, this area here, you can see coloured pixels, red and cyan. Just by double clicking that slider, applying the default amount usually gets rid of virtually all of the colour noise. Just try and find somewhere for looking at the luminosity noise. There isn't too much in this particular image. However, by dragging the slider, maybe you can see slight difference in, we've got to make sure we don't get rid of textured information as opposed to noise information. But usually if you've got a constant tone and you've got texture in there, maybe that is noise. So by dragging the slider along, if you go too far, it makes the whole effect look very plasticky. So I normally have this to less than 40, but it can get rid of a serious amount of noise. You can bring back some of the noise, some of the detail, by dragging the detail slider to the right or to the left. Usually that's left at the default. These two sliders here, the gain effect, the greater the luminance applied. Luminance contrast, again you can, I've pressing the Alt key here, maybe get to see a little bit of how that works. So that's sharpening and noise reduction. So we can now move on to the next tab, hue, saturation and lightness. We've got illuminance. We've got fairly intuitive color channels that we can just drag our sliders along. So if we wanted, say, to change the blues to a different color, we can do that. Not very useful for this particular image. The saturation might be more useful if we wanted to maybe darken down the blues outside, but of course it's affecting, it's actually changing the saturation, adding a little bit of saturation. It's a global effect though, this, so you've got to be careful when you do select these. So let's do the luminance and maybe just darken the blues down a little bit. Split toning, again you can do this in color or black and white. I'm not going to bother here. But if we go back to there and convert to grayscale, this is the ideal way of converting a color image to a grayscale, and you can drag the sliders just like you would by applying different color filters onto the camera. It's a very good tool, that. This one here, lens correction, enable lens profiles. So some of the later versions of Photoshop have got built-in calibration profiles for different lenses, and it gets rid of the distortions inherent in different lenses, distortion and vignetting. I'm going to leave that unchecked just for now, but that is a very useful tool to use. Okay, so we now need to synchronize the settings that I've applied here to the other two images. So all I need to do is select all, select synchronize. This little dialog box comes up, synchronize everything, OK, and these two other images will have the same settings applied. So if you look at that image there, the settings that we got there, click on that one, same settings applied. Click on that one there, same settings applied. So that's a really good way of applying. You work on one image and then you can apply those settings to other images. I'm going to show you in the next tutorial how to set up presets so that new images brought in can be have the same settings applied to them.